Hello, everyone. My name is Desiree Rodriguez. I'm a junior at Las Vegas High School, Youth Power Project member, and moderator for today's event. Welcome to our Youth Roundtable discussion. Today, we will be having a youth-centered and youth-led movement for the police-free schools and hear directly from high school students across the state of Nevada on their views or experiences on the matter. This event was created by youth members of the Youth Power Project, the youth division of Make It Real Nevada. YPP helps mobilize young people to make action on important issues. While being a fairly new member, I have already reaped the benefits of youth activism with other students of my age, such as a sense of community, empowerment, and the knowledge that my actions are paving a better future for the state of Nevada. Activism is a choice that saves lives and makes our world better with continual effort. It's a fight that never ends. My fellow members and I are leading this discussion because the voices of youth tend to be overlooked or not taken into consideration. Yet we are all an example of the opposite. The following group discussion will be divided into 3 parts regarding the school-to-prison pipeline: the problem we're facing, facts that prove the problem exists, and the solution moving forward. Before we begin, I'd like to start off with setting this meeting's agreements. All right, so let's agree to remain respectful of other people and their opinions. Who would like to share the next one?
I'd like to add one. So remember to make space and take space, actively chime in the dialogue while also allowing others to get their thoughts and opinions in. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Ivana.
Thank you, Eden. I'd like to add one, for the viewers out there, stay engaged. You know, this is a difficult conversation, but any commentary, you can feel free to share your thoughts in the chat and just make sure that it's on topic. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Desiree.
Thank you, Eden and Ivana. All right, now I will introduce my friend Izzy, who will address the problem today.
Thank you, Desiree. Hi, my name is Izzy. I am a junior at Nevada State High School and a YPP member. You may be asking yourself, what is the school-to-prison pipeline? The school-to-prison pipeline starts in a classroom. When combined with zero-tolerance policies and the teacher's decision to refer students for punishment can mean they are put out of the classroom and much more likely to be introduced into the criminal justice system. Who is a part of this pipeline? Students from 2 groups, racial minorities and children with disabilities. They are disproportionately represented in the school-to-prison pipeline. African American students, for instance, are 3.5 times more likely than their white classmates to be suspended or expelled. According to a nationwide study by the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, through testimonies, we know that police in CCSD use force to intimidate students, and in fact have used pepper spray on elementary-age students. CCSD Police Department can arrest students for disciplinary issues that could be more effectively handled by trained school officials. Often that these students are arrested for could be handled using other restorative practices. This is what forms the school-to-prison pipeline. Back to you, Desiree.
Thank you, Izzy. All right, so I'm going to be leading some discussion questions. For each question, I will take 2 answers. First one, let's have a conversation about this. Prior to joining the Youth Power Project, who knew that the school-to-prison pipeline existed?
Hi, my name is Mia Albright. Before joining YPP, I didn't really know much about this at all, and I'm really glad that I am now informed about it. I really think that we need to do something about it, and I'm excited to hear more about this conversation. I'll pass it on to Amy.
Yeah, and kind of adding on to what Mia was saying, I didn't understand what it meant to have police on campus when I would see them around campus. And so I think it's really disheartening to understand the statistics of BIPOC students being incarcerated.
Thank you, Mia and Amy. All right, now the next question. Does CCSD school police make you feel safe? Again, 2 answers for this question.
like to go. So I think that as an Asian American, I do have a sort of privilege over my peers that are Black, African American, Afro Latinx, and Hispanic, and then Latino, Latina, and then Latinx. But I understand that from their point of view, they might not feel safe. So I'll pass it on to Layla.
Hi everyone, my name is Layla Lopez and I am a senior at East Tech. Personally, we do not have a lot of police, but there will be times in which they think we need them. So when we have assemblies or just kind of like events where there's more people, and honestly, I've never felt safe having them there. Sometimes when you're looking up in the crowd or you're looking up towards, we have like an upper level, you'll see police officers and it kind of makes you a bit worried just because them being there feels as if there's something to be worried about. Well, we've never had a case like that. So honestly, they don't make me feel safe at all. And especially in my school, nothing happens in which we need them there. But definitely we have students who struggle with mental health and things like that. So
Thank you, Amy and Layla. It seems like from your guys' answers that from your perspective, it doesn't really serve a purpose to you. And if anything, it makes the environment a little bit intimidating. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the mic over to Lucas, who will be covering the facts about the school-to-prison pipeline.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Lucas. I am a sophomore at Spring Valley High School and a member of YPP. I'm here to discuss the facts about the school-to-prison pipeline. So how does the pipeline show up in our communities? According to the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, about 5% of white students have been suspended during their schooling experience, compared with, pardon me, compared with 16% of Black students. This means Black students are more than 3 times as likely to be suspended than their white peers. Troubling, this disparity begins as early as preschool. Nearly half of all preschool students suspended are Black, though they represent just 18% of total preschool enrollment. According to the CCSD records, pepper spray has been used against children of all ages. The 2 schools who had the most incidents had over 90% non-white students. Pepper spray has been used in elementary schools at least once a year since 2012. A nearby school district, Washoe County School District, by comparison, only had 6 pepper spray incidents over the past decade, 3 of which occurred during the 2009 to 2010 school year. Critics will say that there must be something wrong with Black people if they're getting suspended at higher rates. It is an easy way out that Americans have historically taken in trying to explain racial disparities. Personal observations of individual behavior is not an evidence of group behavior. Racist ideas of Black inferiority is the easy way out.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Now I'm going to be leading the next 2 discussion questions. So going back to what he said about the use of pepper spray on students, in what case would spraying chemicals in the eyes of children of any age be okay? For this question, I will take 4 responses.
Izzy,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
As a Latinx person, I see as pepper spray useless to be used on students. Because the thing is, pepper spray, the chemicals that they have inside are banned and are illegal when it comes to warfare. But when it comes onto American soil in our education systems in our schools, police are allowed to use it on minors, students who are trying to get an education to be able to complete high school and be able to go to college and do bigger things in their life. I believe it's to state fear into them, because they feel like they need power over these students, because students can be vulnerable. And if you endanger their life of work, then you get power. And I feel like that we shouldn't use it, because kids are starting to feel unsafe around police officers, around a school that is supposed to be a safe haven for where they can learn. I will hand it off to Izzy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't really understand how pepper spray, those chemicals can be illegal in warfare, but on our little kids, it's allowed and it's seen as acceptable. And I think that can be very traumatizing to them for like a little kid who's like 7, just trying to like play with his friends and get pepper sprayed. Like that just doesn't sit right with me. I pass it on to Iman.
Personally, as a Black student who goes to school every day, I feel as if using pepper spray on students is unnecessary and a bit ironic because usually in these instances when students may act out of stress or whatever the case may be, usually they are maybe fighting with their peers or something, and it can be seen as a dangerous situation. So to add these chemicals and even more dangerous things into this mix already, I feel like it's very counterintuitive and it doesn't seem to really be solving the problem at hand. And I feel like we could be using our resources for better things like prevention programs, and I just feel like our resources could go in better places. I will be passing it off to Eden.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eden. I would definitely say in no case whatsoever is pepper spraying any student okay, and especially, as we mentioned, elementary school age children. It's absolutely unacceptable, and obviously, when we see these things happening, it's rooted in, the systemic racism, and just it creates a horrible environment for students to learn, and just knowing that these instances could happen and pepper spray incidents are possible, it doesn't make a safe learning environment. And just like Lucas said, school's supposed to be a safe haven for children, and it just counteracts that safe haven. And I'll go ahead and pass the mic back to Desiree.
Thank you everyone who responded. I see here that we're all on the same page. Pepper spraying students is wrong. We don't deserve that. And no matter the environment, the situation, better off. It's just not right. And we're not criminals, so why treat us like some? So for our last question for this section, why are minorities the targets of these abuses? I'll be taking another 4 responses for this.
I'd like to talk. I think that a lot of this is in part of what Eden was saying, systemic racism, but it also is rooted in the whitewashed curriculum in history that we have. And so I think that with changing that and teaching younger kids that all people are beautiful. It doesn't matter what skin color they have, what religious background, sexual orientation, and ethnicity. I think that it is all deeply rooted in education. And so a solution to that might be some type of maybe education reform that teaches, anti-racist curriculum. And so I think that Layla can definitely elaborate onto this.
So I definitely feel like minority students are more targeted just because of implicit biases that people have, in which minorities are thought to be as aggressive or less than our white counterparts. And so it definitely affects the way that a lot of students or staff and even other students treat minority students, and impacts the way that they view them and interact with them. So I think I'll pass it on to Mia.
I agree with both Amy and Layla. I think it does have a lot to do with deep-rooted systemic racism and implicit bias. A lot of people have preconceived ideas of what a minority should act like or be like or is like that just aren't true. Something definitely needs to change. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Ruth.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I think I agree with what Mia and Layla and Amy said. I think it just goes with the preconceived images people have of minorities. And I think it's just easier to kind of like target them. And so I feel like it really just has to do with the stereotypes that are already put in place for minorities and what people think they are like or act like. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Desiree.
Thank you, Ruth, Mia, Layla, and Amy. So again, we can all agree here that minorities are not a problem. No matter how we look, how we appear, that doesn't define how we're going to act. So again, treating us like criminals and making us targets is really showing the true system and who it is who's governing us. All right, now I'm going to pass it on to Ivana, who will discuss the solutions to the school-to-prison pipeline.
Thank you so much, Desiree. So hey everyone, my name is Ivana Carastueva, and I am a senior at Spring Valley High School and a member of YPP. I'm here today to discuss with you solutions to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline and what steps the CCSD Board of Trustees can take to advance the principles of funding education, not incarceration, restoring and strengthening the civil rights of young people, and uplifting public education. As mentioned by my peers, police and schools do not make school environments safer. On the contrary, rather than reduce school violence, scholars have found that the presence of school merely criminalizes typical adolescent behavior, such as disorderly conduct. With this being a proven fact, backed by evidence, it doesn't make sense investing in resources that act to harm rather than to help students of color. Instead, we wish to see the budget that is currently going to the Clark County School Police Department to be reinvested into the students. And the first step in doing this would be replacing school police with personnel like counselors, special education instructors, and mental health professionals. Whereas police create an environment of hostility amongst the students, the presence of school counselors have been proven to foster a sense of belonging for young people and have actually linked to a reduction in fight, bullying, and school infractions. Despite this fact, however, there are not nearly enough school counselors within CCSD. As opposed to the 1 to 250 student to counselor ratio as recommended by the American Nurses Association, the current estimated ratio in CCSD is 1 counselor for every 500 students. So once the appropriate personnel is deployed, the district should definitely look to adopt supportive programs like restorative justice in place of punitive punishments. These programs would focus on bringing conflicting parties together and moderating their solutions, again, without the use of unnecessary punitive punishments that have proven only to deteriorate situations. Things like peer counseling, drug and alcohol treatment, community service, non-fiscal restoration, mental health care, and behavioral contracts would be among the strategies to look at. In implementing this, the board can initiate a small pilot program within a specific school to begin changing the way that schools approach discipline, and in doing so, creating a safer environment overall. This pilot success must then be followed by a deeper investment in funding restorative practices district-wide. With this, schools should also consider adopting a culturally responsive approach to teaching. This form of teaching would acknowledge the diverse backgrounds of students and families and address institutional, personal, and instructional biases, leading to safer communities for women, youth of color, LGBTQ students, and students of different faiths. Both Congress and the administration must ensure that all school policies, including ones related to discipline, immigrant students, LGBTQIA+ students, students with disabilities, among others, are inclusive, non-punitive, and trauma-informed. They must also support maximum local democratic control of the education system. So these are just some solutions CCSD Board of Trustees should consider when it comes to the topic of police-free schools. The list that I have presented is by no means exhaustive, as there are many different ways we approach this situation. If anything, I hope these solutions have given you some food for thought. And with that being said, I'd like to pass it on to Desiree, who will ask the next set of audience engaging questions.
Thank you so much for that, Ivana. That was definitely insightful, and I feel like I've learned a lot. All right, so for these questions, I'll be taking another 4 participants to answer them. First one, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you benefit from the increase of counselors/mental health professionals at your school?
I'd like to say something. I think that anyone I think just anyone in general would benefit from having a counselor or maybe even a mental health professional in their environment. We see that as more of a luxury than a necessity in life, and I take that as not more of like a doctor as in for health, like when you get physicals, but mental health is something that's up and on the rise. So I think that that's something that's really important that we need to have. I can pass it on to Eden.
I definitely agree with that, I guess, metaphor simile you made of how mental health professionals are seen as luxury when they're definitely a necessity at schools. It'd be much more beneficial to schools and the school to prison pipeline if we would start at the root of the problem and make sure these problems don't even happen to begin with, by implementing counselors and like mental health professionals, because obviously there's a reason why students may be acting out in some cases or fights may be happening, and the results of fights or small misdemeanors shouldn't result them in being a part of the mass incarceration system. So I think it would, on a scale of 1 to 10, to answer your question, 10, I would benefit, and I know every other school would benefit from an increase in counselors and mental health professionals. And I'll go ahead and pass the mic to Layla.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, I definitely think we would benefit, just because more students struggle with mental health than anything. And when they say we have people to talk to, it really doesn't feel like that if people aren't really there. I know that we have one social worker at my school, but even then, I'm sure she could be overwhelmed if there were too many students trying to go to her about all their different problems. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10, and like what everyone else was just to reiterate what everyone else said, not just my school, but all the other schools would definitely benefit from having mental health like specialists rather than having police in our schools. Okay, so I'll pass it on to Allison.
Oh, hi. Okay. So personally, I would never dream of talking to a counselor because I've been fortunate enough that I have a nice home life and I just don't want to take up resources that other people would use. But I also think that ties back into what Amy brought up and how getting mental health help just doesn't really feel accessible to us right now. And part of that is because we're lacking counselors. I know I'd probably say 10 because on the sake of my friends, I'd want them to have the resources to make sure that they're doing okay in school, especially because I'm in the magnet program and I know a lot of my peers have a tendency to burn themselves out and I don't want to see anyone stress more than they have to. Yeah, I think I'll pass it back to Desiree.
Thank you for those answers. Now I have another question for us. How can we as students help push this change in our district to end the school to prison pipeline? In other words, what can you and your peers do now? 4 responses.
I think that one thing we could do is talk about it, like bring it up and just like, either post about it on social media, just talk about it. Because like as high schoolers, just there's not much that we can do, but if we're talking about it and bring awareness to it, it can inspire the people who are in charge to think about it. I'll pass it on to Ivana.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that getting the conversation started is very important as a first step into implementing restorative justice practices and making a school environment where everybody feels comfortable in sharing. And I definitely think that us students, we have a very unique opportunity right now. Obviously, we can't implement any permanent policies or anything like that. That's up to the committee board, but we can definitely make change in our own schools by starting organizations and clubs and conversing with our teachers. Teachers, they reach out to they reach out to students every day, so they have a very big impact on us. And I think definitely we should work with teachers in creating clubs that mediate conversations. When somebody is having a conflict with another student, they can feel free to go into and talk with their teachers and talk with their peers about solutions to mitigate the problem. And yes, so I'll pass it on to Hope.
Hi, I'm Hope. I'm a sophomore at the Las Vegas Academy, and I agree with what Ivana said. Definitely starting clubs and organizations just to kind of get a conversation going and just to make it a normal subject to talk about and to make people feel comfortable sharing their experiences rather than it seeming like a topic that should be avoided, because that's exactly how the problem is going to continue. So I definitely think that starting organizations is a great idea. I'm going to pass it to Mia.
I think that's a great question because there's so many ways that us as youth can get involved with our school. We definitely need to hold our school leadership accountable, and we can do that by showing up to school board meetings, creating petitions. I know I'm a student in Washoe County, and I know we have a student advisory council who reports to the district and works with district leadership on issues that students care about. So I joined that to make my voice heard. Like Ivana said, there's so many ways that we can get involved, and I think school clubs are another great way. But basically just holding our leadership accountable. Peaceful protest is also a really good way to make our voices heard.
Thank you, Mia. All right, so I'm sure we could all agree that social media is one thing that could really help us spread the word. And also, like we've had mentioned here, reaching out in our schools and talking to our teachers, collaborating. We don't know who else supports us, but we might not know if we don't ask. Maybe they feel alone as well. So I think definitely getting the conversation going will create a change. All right, so I have another question here. How important is it for allies to show up during this movement? Just like going off of what I had just finished saying, why is it important to get together during these times?
So I definitely think that more non-POC people should become more aware of this issue, because we do have a certain level of privilege that our fellow POC people do not. So I definitely think that it is our responsibility to utilize this privilege for the benefit of the cause that our Black and Brown peers are fighting for. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Allison.
Hi, yeah, I think allies basically are the movement. We can't solve problems unless we do this together, and if not for ourselves, then for each other. Obviously, we have a lot more impact with our words when there are more of us together. And as this meeting itself shows, we need to spread our voices just so that the wider community is aware of these issues, because I know I personally wouldn't have ever found YPP if allies to the movement hadn't reached out to me. So I find allyship really valuable experience overall. Sorry. I think I'll pass it on to Marvin.
Hello, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. How important is it for allies to show up during this movement?
I think it's really important because I remember Izzy said earlier it's important to talk about it, get the word out because everybody's seen it, everybody's seen the injustice, just nobody knows how to like express or get it out. Nobody knows what to do. So I feel like having that conversation and just getting the word out and showing the solutions is definitely way. And I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. So definitely coming together with two different groups is going to create a stronger impact for our movement. So it's important that we continue to spread this word, and discussions like this is what is going to lead us to making a change in our community, and soon the rest of the world will follow after once they see the impacts that we have reaped. All right, so before I pass it over to Eden to give a closing statement, I would like to just add this piece. The Youth Power Project is a group that organized this virtual event. Can the group explain to our viewers who YPP is and what we fight for?
I will definitely chime in. So we are a group of youth leaders who are here to fight for equality. Like, for an example, the school-to-prison pipeline. We fight for everyone and we fight for all. And we are here to support anyone and everyone in the school district and out. We use our voices to be heard, and we will keep on fighting until everyone has heard our voices.
And kind of adding to what Lucas was saying, YPP has a really special place in my heart, at least, because it's changed a lot of perspective in my own mind. But the Youth Power Project is a youth-led, program that's part of Make the Road Nevada, and we specialize in organizing local grassroots organizing, and we support a lot of things that like Lucas was saying. So we have like social, economic justice, we have reproductive rights, so like, reproductive rights, and then LGBTQ rights, you have immigrant rights, and as we were talking about today, is like citizen pipeline, and we also have like youth leadership, and we have empowerment as well.
Yeah, and I agree with what Lucas and Avery say. I want to add on that it's also like a community of people, like we come together as kind of like a family where we just like all support each other. Yeah, we all support each other. So.
Thank you, everyone who responded. And I would just like to add that the Youth Power Project is definitely a safe space for all students, all youth, for us to really just get our word out there. And if we don't know where to start, this is a perfect place because it gives you the platform, the resources, we have the community here, and together we educate ourselves and fight the problem. We're never alone in this, and even events like this, they take all of us to make it possible. So again, thank you everybody who participated. And for our final speaker, I'm going to pass it over to my fellow member Eden for the closing statement.
Thank you, Desiree. Once again, hello, everyone. My name is Eden Abibi, and I'm a member leader of the Youth Power Project. Thank you all for taking the initiative to actively participate in an uncomfortable but necessary conversation and educating yourselves upon these issues. As we all have discussed and very well know, the voices of youth are irreplaceable, and we need to keep pushing to fight ignorance and make change. This is not a Black issue. This is a humanity issue. For too many years, we've been told to deal with this alone, but this exact allyship, this dialogue is what's necessary to overcome the intolerable matter. The fight is beyond school campus police. Remember, Black students don't simply escape these inequities after finishing their education. We have seen hundreds of victims of police brutality, especially outside of school, ultimately costing lives in many cases. And every life that has been lost and continues to be lost is unacceptable. We demand to remove school police officers, metal detectors, and surveillance from school. We demand divestment from school police, which means removal of all police personnel from school, whether employed by the CCSD PD or any other agency. We demand to eliminate policies, practices, and funding that that contribute to the surveillance, militarization, and the criminalization of schools. We demand to end arrests and tickets for non-criminal violations and misdemeanors. We demand to clear and expunge students, discipline, and criminal records. We demand investment for restorative justice practices, mental health support counselors, and culturally relevant curriculum. We demand CCSD to fully implement AB 168, ending school-to-deportation pipeline, requiring schools to provide a plan of action based on restorative justice before suspending or expelling a student. To recognize and honor victims of racialized violence in the Black community, I'll be saying just a few of their names. So say their names. Altatiana Jefferson, Akai Garley, Tamir Rice, Yvette Smith, Michael Brown, Natasha McKenna, Philando Castillo, George Floyd, Rekia Boyd, Alton Sterling, Katherine Johnston, Freddie Gray, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Janisha Fonville, Botham Jean, Ayanna Jones, Stephon Clark, Breonna Taylor, and Kayla Moore. We are all well aware that this list continues, but we need to put in the work to ensure not one more person can die in the hands of police. Thank you, and I'll pitch the mic back to Desiree.
Thank you so much for that, Eden. Thank you everyone here who took the time to gather on this evening. If you want to make a change in the Las Vegas community, you should definitely join YPP. The Youth Power Project, which is YPP, is a youth-led program that engages young people in local grassroots organizing, policy innovation, and financial literacy education. All you have to do is go to our Instagram page at Youth Power Project NV and on Twitter, YPPNV. We meet every Thursday at 5 via Zoom and welcome everyone and anyone between the ages of 14 through 21. Again, thank you everyone who took the time, everyone here who was participating, and we really appreciate it. Now, let's go and make a change.